Okay, welcome everyone. Good morning. So we have a couple of people coming in now. So for those who are coming in, do let us know where you're coming from in the chat so that we can test as well. Be sure to just mark that you're sending it to everyone. Yes. Hi, hello there. I see we have now 40 attendees and coming in. Hi there, Robert. Welcome. Okay. See people from TI Sparkle. Somebody coming in from Turin. Welcome. Thanks for joining us, by the way. I mean, I know it's Easter break for some people, but nonetheless, we see quite a big turnout even now. So thanks for coming. Okay, so we're now at 50 attendees. While we're waiting for the rest to come in, so I'd just like to thank everyone for coming to this project update webinar, which we organize on a regular basis, basically just to provide relevant updates on what's been going on in OCRE, where the latest activities are, where the latest developments are. And so today, David will give us a good overview of the most important developments. We'll show you as well the EO catalog, which follows the launch of our cloud catalog. There will be some updates on our test suite activity, which will be presented by CERN. This will be followed by the general overview of the usage of the framework and the cloud catalog. And then we're going to talk about also the new call of EC funding with the OCRE framework. Finally, we will close this part with a discussion on the OCRE Cloud experiences, followed by a chance for you to ask us any questions you may have. So the question, by the way, will be done via the chat because I see we're quite a few people around, so it would be better to just do it by the chat. So just make sure you can type in there. I would ask, however, to keep all your questions towards the end, just in case your question is being addressed in a later slide. So with that, I think we can start. So over to you, David.
Right, Rob, you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you for choosing to spend an hour with the OCRE team today. My name is Dave Haynes. I'm the project director on OCRE. I'm also the head of cloud services at Géant. OCRE is a project with 4 consortium partners, Géant, Trust IT, CERN, and the RAIA Group. And the OCRE project came about when the European Commission realized that commercial services, commercial cloud services, were providing a great deal of benefit to the European research community and wanted to make these services far easier to consume. European public sector procurement is quite complex, and we needed to make these services easily available to the research community in Europe. So I'm going to tell you, just remind you about what we set out to do in OCRE, what we've done so far, talk about some of the more recent activities, some of the obstacles we've encountered, how we've overcome those. But just to start off with, I'll talk a little bit about the framework. The cloud framework was published on TED on the 15th of April 2020. The framework contracts were signed in Q1 2021, as the framework contracts from a previous Géant Cloud framework were coming to an end. The market response to the tender was 1,100 bids, which we were really impressed by. We think this is unprecedented, and OCRE really put a big foot forward. The result of the tender was 473 cloud contracts across 40 lots. 37 cloud platforms are represented across the region. There is a minimum of 9 platforms per country, a maximum of 17 platforms per country. Those will include the bigger hyperscale providers, big European providers like Orange, and then a number of other European providers. So there's quite a selection for the research community. And then the Géant 4 project has a contract management team that has picked up the management of these contracts and works closely with the NRENs, the suppliers, and the consuming institutes. They actually get quarterly reporting from the suppliers, which is mandatory, and we are able to dashboard the consumption trends for this community in cloud in Europe. We reach about 10,000 institutes. Oversight on all project activities, but particularly the funding activities, is provided by the OCRE Expert Advisory Board. And you can go to the OCRE project site and see who those people are. They are all external to the project, but certainly well known within the European research community. The platforms have all been tested, and Ignacio from CERN is going to tell you a little bit about that. There are peering points of presence with GÉANT, with the GÉANT network, which serves the European community. There are data ingress and egress waivers in place. EduGain centralized onboarding, so the GÉANT R&E interfederation has been taken into account, and then a lot of additional discounting. I think the research institutes would be hard-pressed to find a better deal than consuming through an OCRE call-off. And then there's an online catalog by country for both cloud services and EO services, which Rob is going to tell you a little bit about. But as I said, visit the OCRE project site and have a look to see what we have on offer. We get a lot of questions on how to consume, and there is an info pack. Download the info pack at the OCRE project website. Rob will kind of point out that we have provided some of this information on the catalog. But essentially, download your info pack, define your workload requirements. You can make a direct award to a supplier. There will be a single supplier of services from each of the platforms in your country, or you can run a mini desktop competition, which there's a tool set in the info pack, which allows you to reapply the initial tender award criteria response, or run a mini competition amongst the select framework holders in your country. Prepare the service order, sign the call of contract, and consume the service. Some of the frequently asked questions we get is in terms of legitimacy. The important point here is that the call of contract between the institute and supplier is governed by local law in your country. The institutes are responsible for scoring and awarding decisions, and direct awards are possible, within conditions if you can just justify selecting a specific service. Non-EU countries, because this was tendered under EU law, in some of the non-EU countries, that the framework contracts can easily be used. Some of them might require some kind of publication on a local tendering platform in country. Right, in September, October, 2020, we ran our first calls. And we disseminated a chunk of the adoption funding that the European Commission made available to drive these services. The core details were essentially asking for a detailed project description, so we could see how relevant your project was in terms of its discipline, how it could demonstrate the benefits of the commercial cloud or EO services, and then asked a couple of questions that are kind of interest to the broader European Open Science Cloud. We did ask whether or not the projects were really consuming these services, because it is our intention to drive adoption. And if you are consuming these services at scale, you would not be eligible. We awarded 15 of 32 cloud proposals that we received, and you can actually just have a look at some of the really interesting research that's being done that is consuming these services. The little green ticks highlight the fact that we have completed procurements on behalf of these institutes. We are waiting for institutes to sign call of contracts with the suppliers, and then there are some procurements that are still underway. But we essentially spent 1.2 million excluding VAT, and we awarded 15 of the 32 proposals, although there were more that were compelling, because we realized that our project is limited in terms of resources. We were testing the procurement mechanisms for the first time, so we didn't want to take it too far beyond this. And then if you have a look on the right-hand side here, the projects we awarded Earth observation services to are 6 out of about 22 projects. Again, we dealing with an immature market in terms of Earth observation services, so we were also very cautious in terms of what we wanted to commit to. Earth observation, we have recently published an online catalog, which Rob will talk to you a little bit more about. These are for digital services consuming Copernicus, but where startups and SMEs are adding a lot of value to this information, to this data, focused on geography, on environmental issues, but some really interesting bespoke services. Again, the oversight is provided by the expert advisory board that we assembled. The one thing about the Earth observation services is that there's quite a low procurement threshold. These are not procurements that are in the hundreds of thousands of euros. So we ended up not having to construct any formal framework, but we simply invite the suppliers that have registered on the OCRE catalogue to submit a proposal for whatever requirement the researcher has. Across both calls, Earth observation and cloud, we awarded projects in Austria, Belgium, Germany, Hungary, Israel, Italy, Moldova, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Serbia, Spain, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. I'm not sure why I read all of those out, but there you go. We spent 4.5 million for Earth observation services, excluding that. So that's probably more like 0.6 million. Okay, and so this is basically the issues that we've had. We've had a lot of activities that have been delayed. We've learned a lot of lessons, and these are the project challenges and resolutions that we've kind of had to deal with. The cloud tender publication was reviewed. The publication documents were reviewed by the European Commission before publication. This took some time, but it has actually provided the research community in Europe and the education community with a real sense of security. I mean, these are call-offs that you can easily use. They are legitimate. They have been vetted by a number of different people. There was an unprecedented market response. I mean, we saw 1,100 bids, and how do you score, rank, and award 1,100 bids in the short time that these projects offer us? And we solved this through a lot of process automation, scoring, awarding, and even the actual contract, building the contracts, delivering the contracts, signing the contracts. We built a lot of process automation and actually made up some time there. It's quite complicated to use single-purpose vouchers in the EU based on the rules around single-purpose vouchers. And we also came across an issue of dual VAT. So if GÉANT, as a central purchasing body, was buying single purchase vouchers on behalf of an institute in Spain from a Spanish supplier, we would incur Spanish VAT, but we could also have incurred VAT in the Netherlands, which would have made this whole process completely untenable. But we did get a ruling from the Dutch tax authority ensuring us that the OCRE project and GÉANT would not incur this dual VAT. This took a long time. We actually lost about 8 months last year, during which we could have been making these procurements and running subsequent calls for projects. So we did lose a lot of time this year. We also have a restrictive grant agreement with the European Commission. Our project grant agreement is quite restrictive. And we have to make sure that we're eligible to claim costs for these procurements against the grant agreement. But we actually workshopped this with the Commission, and the Commission did a lot of analysis and signed off on our way forward. As I said, the DPS, the dynamic procurement system for Earth observation services, was not really necessary based on the procurement thresholds and the size of the EO procurements. But it was also inappropriate because it would have made the small market of startups and SMEs would have had to become VAT compliant across 40 countries in Europe, which while they're building up their business, is probably not really realistic. And as I said, the procurements were below threshold. So we've engaged with this market through multiple direct awards. But we lost a lot of time. We have a lot of work still to do. We've gained a lot of knowledge. We want to scale up the projects instead of procuring like much smaller projects, procure bigger, expand the time frame, and really complete this job. So we presented on a really innovative accelerated funding mechanism that combines the call to the market and the research community into one. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in my next slot when I talk about the opportunities for the research community that are coming up. But through this, we were granted an extension by the European Commission until December this year. So we've got a fairly short space of time to disseminate the rest of the adoption funding, but we believe we can do it. Rob, that's all for me in this slot.
Thank you for that, David. Lots of information there. Just remember, though, to keep all your questions towards the end in case some of your questions are addressed in later slides. So now it's my turn. So I'm Rob Coelho from Trust IT Services and the Communications and Outreach Lead of the OCRE project. So today I'll be presenting to you the Earth Observation Catalog that we've developed in Trust IT, and also sort of remind you of some of the functionalities of the Cloud Catalog, also relevant to what David mentioned earlier. So just quickly share with you. Okay, so basically this is the OCRE Earth Observation Catalog, which was launched very recently. So this is very similar to the OCRE Cloud Catalog. Both of them are key results of the OCRE project, and both were developed by Trust IT with guidance from the rest of the consortium. So basically, this supports the project's aim of creating a digital single market for EO and cloud services for research in Europe. And basically what led to this work is that on December 15, 2021, we invited a couple of Earth observation companies publicly to request to be included in the OCRE catalog. And basically this catalog was developed to support the project's EO procurement activities, as the catalog is one of the main points of reference when sourcing EO suppliers. At the same time, basically, the company is listed in this catalog and as well as in the cloud catalog, and also benefit from visibility in the growing EOS environment and being more easily discoverable from research and universities towards which the catalog will be advertised. So going more into detail into the EO catalog, so you can easily access it from the main menu. There's a new item which highlights both the catalogs, the cloud catalog and the EO catalog. The main method of finding services is basically to filter by type. So basically we have 4 main types that we use to filter them. Sorry, 5. So we have data analytics, and basically if you click it in the same page, basically it will filter all the services that have that type. So basically we have, as you can see, data analytics, EO data processing, interactive algorithm development, user algorithm hosting, and value-added products. Basically, for each of the services that we have here, so it provides some basic information about the service. It provides information about the provider and how to reach out to them. But also for some of them, if there are any funding opportunities for each of those services or for that specific service, then that will be mentioned as well. And also there's a pathway to access it directly. So basically that's the Earth Observation Catalog, much more simpler and streamlined, really, which is reflecting how OCRE basically deals with the EO side of the project. And so as a reminder, we also have the OCRE Cloud Catalog, which was launched some time back. That's what this looks like. So one new thing that I can highlight that we have now here is basically there's now a quick guide on how to use the OCRE framework. So there's a one-page fact sheet that you can now access from the main page. So it basically provides you information on what is it, why should you use it, and how to use the OCRE Cloud framework. And of course, some contacts if you need further information. So just a quick reminder, the OCRE Cloud Catalog is basically navigable via country. So we have a map here, which is clickable and interactive. And also You can also choose the country name or flag from here. And then under each country, basically you can see what the available platforms are, who is the contact there, and as well as what is a distinct offer for each platform. So that's the OCRE Cloud Catalog as well as the OCRE EO Catalog. Now that's it for me. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them later in the Q&A. And now we have the test suite updates and insights from Ignacio.
Thanks, Rob. All right, so maybe if you, I can share the screen now. All right. Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Ignacio Poloaga. I'm a cloud engineer at CERN's IT department. And in this presentation, I'm going to give a quick update on the whole testing activity that we've been doing in the project. So first, starting with a little bit of motivation, why we decided to create this tool. Essentially, cloud services nowadays, they offer services that range between infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So if benchmarking has to be done, then all these layers have to be considered. And at the same time, commodity services need to be validated to research use cases, which are not the standard use cases from customers, let's say. So with this in mind, then we decided, okay, we need to develop this tool. On the right-hand side of the slide here, you see a list of things that we will achieve with this tool. The most important, especially in the OCRE project, will be to simplify the validation or the comparison between cloud services. In terms of the context or the lifetime, let's say, of the tool, so we started in 2018 with the lessons learned from the HSI Cloud project. In 2019, we started to develop the tool for the OCRE project. The year after, in 2020, we used it initially in the Archiver project. And then last year, we used it in CloudBank, but extensively, we use it in the OCRE project, of course, to run all the tests in all the selected clouds. Now, in the future, the idea is to have this included in the European Open Science Cloud environment. Now, some technical details about the tool. So it's written in Python, and it uses open technologies. So Terraform, Ansible, Docker, and Kubernetes. Essentially, what it does is it creates a Kubernetes cluster, and then the tests run inside Docker containers on the Kubernetes cluster. This allows to deploy very heterogeneous workloads because we basically create a container with all the dependencies, and then we can run it pretty much everywhere. For the results, we collect them in S3 bucket in the CERN cloud. And then something that is new that was not presented before is that we have a results dashboard that it will allow buyers to see the results in a visual way rather than just reading JSON files. Nevertheless, this is like we specify here. This is for buyers, so it will not be made public. Regarding the participation, so 27 platforms were contacted for conducting this testing, and 15 of them agreed to participate and provided the access, and the remaining ones, for one reason or another, we couldn't fulfill this task in their platforms. About the locations where we run the tests, so we run in an amount of 10 countries in Europe. On the map that you see here, the bigger the dot means that we run more times there. If you look at the dot in Germany, so it's larger than the other ones. This is essentially because a lot of the providers, they have data centers in Frankfurt, so that's the reason why. For some of the tests, specifically for storage, we also run, because due to some limitations, we had to run in other locations. So that's what you see there, Japan and the US. So what you see here in this table is the list of workloads that we deployed. And so it's a lot of information, but I'm not going to go through right now. We also provide here a link to the catalog, but the key information here is this column on the right, because here we specify, let's say, the domain of each benchmark. So you can see that we cover CPU for both, we cover compute for both CPU, but also GPU. We cover networking, the network and accessibility, some APIs, also storage, distributed computing. So at the end of the day, we try to cover as much as we could from the services. Regarding the results, so as you might know, the results are confidential, meaning that we're not making them public. We're only sharing them with the representative of each cloud provider. We are in the process of doing that. Some of the providers have already received the results, and we are also sharing the ones that are still missing. Nevertheless, there are a few figures that we can share with you. And so these figures that we have here, they apply to only to the 15 tested clouds. And for example, 40% of the tested clouds are based on open source technologies. The majority use OpenStack, but we've also seen CloudStack. 66% offer a variety of GPUs. And from this 60% of them offer GPU-ready images. These are basically images that have the GPU drivers installed. So when you create a VM with that image, you are ready to use the GPU without any major configuration. The majority of them, 94%, offer object storage. This is essentially the S3 service. 70% of them offer multiple locations across Europe. The remaining ones either offer only one in Europe or one in Europe and other regions outside of Europe. 66% of the tested clouds support Terraform, which is this is a good thing, given that Terraform is the most popular tool for provisioning infrastructure. This is what's called infrastructure as a code. And then last but not least, one figure about the networking is that 67%, in their cases, we were able to see that the default path from CERN to these providers was following the GN.NET hubs. And here I said that it's by default because appearing with GN doesn't mean that necessarily all the traffic will go through their routers. There are some configurations that could be needed to have it. So it's something to consider to tell users later that in case they need to make use of the GN network, it's better to double check if the configuration is the right one to benefit from it. Regarding the next steps, in the scope of the OCRE project, so the testing activity has completed, and this means that we're not going to run more tests using the test suite in the project. The obtained results will be reported to the European Commission. We're actually in the process of writing the report for that. And for more details regarding the results in the project, please do get in touch with the colleagues from the project management. Now, regarding the actual tool, so we will continue evolving it, like I said at the beginning, with the goal of having it in the EOSC. The reason why we're doing this is because we've seen interest from the community, and so what we plan to do is to extend the test catalog, not only focusing on infrastructure, but of course trying to cover the different layers. Here we also would like to do some testing for fair assessment and authorization and authentication infrastructure. Of course, continue growing the list of supported providers. Allow users to, let's say, plug their own benchmarks and tests. So we provide the framework, but then allowing the users to bring their own custom workloads. We think that will be very beneficial. We will need to work. We want to work on increase the resilience to recover from failed rounds and implement retries, and of course expand the configuration options to allow the users more control of the tool in order to make it more efficient. Now here we've added a few pointers. There you have the repository. It's completely public. So if you have access to a cloud provider, you can run it. We also have there the documentation, an email address for contact. You can contact us there, or even on the email addresses in the initial slide. And then on the right side, we've added some links to some demos that we've done of the test suite in 2 different EGI conferences. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much, and back to you, Ro.
Thank you very much, Ignacio. So that's very interesting. Another contribution to EOS. So next up, we have Jakob Tendo from DFN, who will give us a general overview of the usage of the framework and cloud catalog. So Jakob, take it away.
Yep, thanks very much, Rob. I'd like to just take a few minutes to update you on the adoption of the cloud services under the OCRE frameworks, and the distribution channel of the demand aggregation under OCRE goes through the National Research and Education Network community, the NREN community, which is organized in the GÉANT project and in the GÉANT community. And that is the way that the framework contracts make their way into the individual countries, where they're then made available to institutions of higher education and research. And I would just like to quickly walk you through where that consumption is happening. And as you can see here, the overview from the OCRE Cloud Catalog, we have 39 countries whose NRENs signed up to the OCRE tender way back at the beginning, and who are therefore eligible to receive the frameworks and receive the benefits of the expanded cloud service catalog that Rob has already introduced here. So this benefit of a diverse set of cloud services available in a different combination, but a certain diversity of cloud services are available in every country. And of the countries that participated in the OCRE framework, 25 of those are EU countries who, as Dave introduced earlier, have the most direct and most friction-free path towards consuming under the frameworks, because the framework is based on the EU Procurement Directive, and those EU countries should have or are guaranteed to have that in place in their national legislation and be able to consume. And what we see in the statistics that over the years since 2017, when the original GÉANT cloud service framework was put in place, we've seen an increase in the number of countries where active consumption of cloud services is taking place, and we're now at above 50% for the entire OCRE membership countries, but we are nearly 100% of the EU countries that have the simplest and most direct way of consuming the cloud services from the framework. And the GÉANT community and the OCRE project, we're actively working with those other countries who have interest in consuming, but might face some more legal footwork to be done before their national procurement situation is aligned with the OCRE frameworks. I have the honor of starting next year to be co-work package leader in the next GÉANT project, which will be continuing the support of the OCRE frameworks once the OCRE project ends, but will also be preparing and executing the follow-on tender to maintain continuity with these cloud frameworks for the entire research
Jakob, I think you became mute for a second. Can you test your audio again?
Yep. Okay. Apologies.
Now it's good.
I apparently have a slightly wonky microphone, which mutes itself sometimes. Okay, so let me just quickly repeat. Over the last 5 years, we've had a strong growth in the consumption. And what we can also see is that the consumption in 2021, which is the first full year of the OCRE frameworks, has already shown a very strong conversion rate from the previous frameworks combined with a growth. The OCRE frameworks alone contributed 32 million euros of overall consumption across the European countries last year. And we're also seeing a grand total consumption of 93 million since 2017. So we're expecting to cross the 100 million euro mark sometime during this year. And under the assumption that that demand will focus nearly completely on the OCRE frameworks in this year and in following years, we'll be seeing a demand which is probably going to exceed 50 million euros a year from here on forward. So that much just quickly as an update to the framework adoption and the consumption development. And we'll be seeing the numbers from this year and the next few years coming in with great interest. So that's it for me at this time. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jakob. Those are some really compelling numbers there and insights. So next, we have David Haynes once more to talk about the new call of VC funding with the OCRE framework.
Okay, thanks, Rob. You can see my screen?
Yes, that works.
Okay, just let me go back to, let's start there. Right, so as I pointed out in my last slot, we have got a very short amount of time to distribute the remaining 6.5 million, and that will include any VAT payments with adoption funding that we have from the European Commission on OCRE. And based on our learning so far, we came up with a model for both cloud and Earth observation services that instead of running a call for projects and ranking that, we are going out on a procurement call to the market, and the suppliers will be required to reach out to the institutes in their country looking for really compelling projects that they can collaborate on. At the same time, we will, as we publish, we will communicate through the National Research and Education Networks, through various research networks via the OCRE communications channels, the EC, to all the institutes, directing them to the OCRE catalog of cloud services, catalog of EO services, and getting the institutes to reach out to the market, the suppliers, with ideas for really compelling research projects that could be consuming large amounts, and I'll kind of get into that on the next slide. But so this is what we're hoping to do, is actually launch 2 calls, one for cloud, one for EO, market facing, but we will be getting the institutes to participate. The general principles will be, as I said, this 2-in-1, this 2-pronged approach towards aggregating demand, driving demand, understanding the demand. We will be introducing, and this is one of OCRE's primary ambitions, is to build relationships between the market and the institutes and get the market to really step up and focus on the research community. So the suppliers will proactively approach the community. We are going to be using procurements to drive this. We're going to be using various stakeholders to track this. We are going to continue to use the OCRE External Advisory Board. Before we presented on this mechanism to the European Commission and got their acceptance and buy-in, we got the acceptance and buy-in of the OCRE Expert Advisory Board. So we are doing everything we can to ensure fair distribution. This is the really important slide for cloud services, to be awarded up to 500,000 euros worth of cloud infrastructure, platform, and software services through the OCRE frameworks for your research project. Identify the suppliers in your country, reach out to the most likely supplier to meet your needs or suppliers, and collaborate with them on the submission of a proposal, which again clearly highlights your research in terms of discipline, describes how your project can demonstrate the benefit of the cloud services, and shows also that your institute is not currently consuming these services at scale. We're trying to drive adoption, and we will be measuring these projects based on the how we can use them to drive adoption. So go on to the OCRE, the project, the cloud catalog, and have a look, see who's delivering services in your country, and please step forward. This is a great opportunity for the research community to get like significant amounts of cloud infrastructure for their project. On the Earth observation side, we'll be running a call in parallel. The same rules apply. Reach out to the Earth observation suppliers using the catalog. The suppliers that have registered on the catalog are going to be stepping forward with proposals from the institutes, and we will be awarding them again, scoring, ranking, and awarding based on the award criteria that will be made very clear in the call. So please reach out to these. Based on what we're seeing so far in terms of the consumptions of these services and the nature of these services, the market is still predominantly startups and SMEs. We will be funding projects with 20 to 50,000 euros worth of Earth observation services. This keeps us within the European procurement thresholds and makes it kind of easy for us to respond to this demand and to procure on behalf of these projects. Again, please go onto the OCRE website and look at the EO catalog, as was demonstrated by Rob earlier. So, and I cannot emphasize how important it is that the institutes step up to this. It's going to give the institutes and the suppliers a lot of visibility in the community. You will possibly become showcase projects for the broader European Open Science Cloud environment. We will invite you to talk about your research. This is something where we can, we're very excited about demonstrating the benefits of this kind of incredible procurement mechanism and the adoption, the driving of adoption. So please respond to this. And Rob, that's what I've got on the new call.
Okay, I think for the next portion, where we have a discussion with Michel and Andy, maybe we can wait for a bit, because surprisingly for a webinar, we are ahead of time. Michel has actually just joined, so I think we can now proceed. So next up, we have the Open Cloud Experiences, a discussion with Michel Letts and Andy Powell, conducted with Jakob Tendel. So we can just put you on spotlight, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks very much, Rob. Hello, everyone. I'm back here now, not with my cloud manager hat on, but from my previous life as a researcher. I hold a PhD in remote sensing and Earth observation science. So I'm really passionate about the applications of these cloud services for research projects and research institutions. So thanks very much, Andy and Michel, for joining us here today. I already regret that I didn't dress in an orange sweater. I also, we'd be in the team colors then. So just for this very brief panel discussion, I appreciate you both joining and bringing your expertise. So let's start off with the first topic. Are you seeing an increase in the interest in the use of public cloud services for research workloads in the Netherlands and in the UK? Maybe Andy, would you like to start?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Andy Powell. I'm Cloud CTO at JISC, which is the UK NREN. And part of my role is to work with the NREN team promoting and looking after the OCRE Cloud Framework in the UK. So I'll say a couple of things on that. Firstly, we're very we're seeing a lot of uptake and interest in the OCRE Cloud framework. That's the first thing, just echoing some of the points you made earlier, Jakob. We've now got well over 100 institutions buying through the framework, and a lot more interest than that. And over half of our big research universities are now buying through the framework. Now, what's less clear, to be honest, is how much of that spend is directly on research activities and how much is use of cloud for, teaching and learning and maybe hosting enterprise type applications. So it's not yet quite clear how much research activity is going on in public cloud from that evidence, but I think it is highly likely that we're seeing an increase in uptake of public cloud for research. The other thing I'd like to mention is a little bit more anecdotal. So in the UK, we have a regular annual cloud workshop called the UKRI Cloud Workshop. So UKRI is one of our sort of research funding bodies. They run an annual cloud workshop, as I say. Didn't run last year because of COVID for obvious reasons, but ran prior to that. And historically, that workshop has tended to focus on use of our sort of national HPC facilities, so what I'd call private cloud for research. This year we had a workshop in March, and what was really interesting is I think it's the first time there were more talks about use of public cloud than about use of those private cloud facilities, and I think that's really significant. So just to highlight a couple of quick examples, just talks I went to. University of Bath have made a very big strategic commitment to using Azure rather than continuing to invest in their on-prem HPC facilities. I mean, clearly there'll be a bit of work in both areas, but a very significant commitment to use Microsoft for HPC. And they talked about the fact they'd done some total cost of ownership type analysis, and they said publicly, look, this is going to work out cheaper for us than continuing to invest in on-prem. And that's the first time I've heard anyone say anything like that in one of those kind of workshops. University of Cardiff talked about use of AWS for research workloads. They talked about use of a software package or a digital research package called Ronin based on AWS. University of Bristol talked about use of AWS and serverless approaches to manage a UK-wide set of radiological sensors and collecting data from those things. University of Dundee talked about use of AWS for what they call their Treehouse project, which is a trusted research environment. Wellcome Sanger Institute, one of our big research facilities in the UK, talked both about using GCP to genome and health trusted research environment, but also interestingly talked about use of AWS serverless approaches to manage some of the data that's coming in from their COVID research, COVID surveillance activities. And again, they said very clearly that by using serverless approaches on AWS, they'd saved a huge amount of money in using public cloud rather than trying to do those things on their existing on-prem, in-house environments. So all of that is very anecdotal, I appreciate, but I just think we are kind of seeing the beginnings of a real change in the way people are doing research. So sorry, that was me.
Excellent, Andy. Thanks very much for those observations. I'd like to turn to Michelle. Maybe you just introduce yourself briefly too.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Michel Wets. I lead the cloud team within SURF. We've got about 7 people working on the OCRE project, helping institutions in the Netherlands. We've been doing it for quite a while. We got almost all our member institutions use the results of the OCRE tender. And we see a rise for research. It used to be about a 10% market share that rose to 15% last year, and it keeps on growing. What we see is that institutions and researchers increasingly see the advantages the cloud can bring them in the architecture and the way they design their research, the tools and the data sets available to help them quicken their projects. And what we see is that they increasingly look to the cloud for okay, can I use it to do massive amount of compute so I can really do it a lot faster than to do it on my on-prem? And those things speed up the research and speed up the publication, and that is much appreciated. We see a lot of institutions who have used the private environment infrastructure and the community one supercomputer we have at SURF. That is normally always used. And we now see projects moving to the cloud, which are above the capacity of the on-prem and the community cloud. So what we see is new projects starting which design from cloud immediately because of certain reasons. Funding is really an issue. A lot of the funding they get from the government is only still for private and community clouds. So there's an issue there. Yes, it can be cheaper than building your own data center and your own supercomputer. But if you can get it for free because it's government funded, it's a different story. So that is something we have to look in the future. But overall, we see increasingly use of the cloud for research, and are very happy with it.
Excellent, Michel. Thanks very much. Also, Andy, I heard from both of your observations that one of the reasons that cloud is becoming more interesting in applications, but also research applications, is the flexibility, the ability to sometimes make a time is money argument, spending a bit more money now to get the results much faster than would be possible on a fixed infrastructure. And of course, the researchers maybe are more interested in the flexibility and getting the results, and they don't have the closest view on the cost. But we also heard that it is possible to employ the cloud services in a cost-effective manner. And you mentioned total cost of ownership. Your universities came to the conclusion that there was a benefit to total cost of ownership. But do you find that this mind shift, but also the necessity to have lots of new skills and competencies in managing these cloud environments to optimize them, do you feel that might be a factor slowing down the transition, or a friction in many institutions still? Michel, I see you nodding.
Yeah, it is something we've identified early on in the process. It is, I mean, you get everything from the security, the privacy officer, getting board approval for some of these projects. But skill certainly is a challenge. And we've invested from 2018 onwards in teaming with suppliers in getting free trainings or very discounted technical trainings, because that is something which appeals, and it's a win-win true situation. You have the researchers who get skills they didn't have, it gives them the ability to use new functionalities. You have the institutions who feel comfortable because there's less of a chance of a cost overrun or a security breach because they're trained. It's good for the suppliers because the chance of getting good use cases coming out of it is also very high. And it is a good role for SURF to take. So we've trained over 600 people last year, and about a quarter of them actually got certified. And that is really helping to accept the acceptance of cloud as a professional and a mature alternative.
That's really interesting. In the UK, I mean, we're seeing exactly the same kind of issues coming up. Clearly, as you move your research workloads into public cloud, you're competing for skills with the wider marketplace. And we know cloud skills are in demand right across the board, and we know salaries are rising as a result of that. And it becomes increasingly difficult for people to compete with those sort of salary demands within, typical research institutions working with research funding and so on. So we're definitely seeing that as an issue in the UK. And it sounds like in the Netherlands, you're maybe a bit further ahead in trying to upskill people than we are here. I think I'm not aware of a big national program like that to do that, but I think that will come. Actually, I think there is definitely recognition that we need to meet the demand for these kinds of skills in the UK.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really good news to hear. these developments really sounds like you're at the forefront of developments in European research. But I think everyone can learn a lot even from your anecdotal observations. And we'll be very interested to see how this journey goes. Rob, do you want the floor back? Do you want to delve into some questions?
Yes, definitely.
Excellent.
Okay, so
So thanks, Andy, and thanks, Michelle, for taking the time to be here.
Pleasure.
Okay, so now we're into the last minutes of this webinar. So I've seen that there are questions that came in. Most of them appear to have been answered, but now as we are in the Q&A session, so I would suggest if you haven't answered your question yet, please do send them or resend them now again in the chat. We'll pick them from there. Maybe while we're waiting for some additional questions to come in or some old questions to be resent, maybe I give the floor to any of the panelists who would like to share some of their insights or maybe some impressions about some of the presentations today, or maybe some additional comments that were not said earlier. Is there any among the panel who would like to say something before we go into the Q&A?
One of the things I would quickly like to mention, again, this came up at the this UKRI Cloud workshop in the UK last month, is the carbon impact of research. I think is becoming much more of interest to institutions. Well, carbon footprints generally, you know, of universities and so on, much more of interest. And the possibility that by moving workloads to public cloud, you can piggyback on the efforts that the big public cloud players are making in net zero and that kind of thing. So I definitely think that will become a factor, or more of a factor than it has been to date.
I just wanted to add that there's a lot of free trainings available at both Microsoft and Amazon and Google. So if you are a researcher, you're interested in this, most of the introductions trainings are free anyway. So don't be hesitant and just go there, and they're quite accessible.
Yeah, if I could just add quickly now with my national hat, in working with institutions, I've recently heard the feedback that aside from sovereignty concerns, data protection discussion, which is being held in respect to the cloud services, there is a growing realization among institutional operators of infrastructure that the cloud actually offers higher potential IT security than they can safeguard in their local infrastructure. And that is a realization that has not been there in the years past, and it seems to be growing. Also in the light of some fairly high profile incidents that have been happening on campus IT infrastructure throughout the community.
Okay, thanks for the additional comments. Okay, we have a question from Aidan Higgins. If the call is open for cloud proposals at the end of April, when will it close?
The call will be open for 8 to 10 weeks. We're trying to get onto the agendas of the institutes and the suppliers before the summer break. And we will then score, rank and award projects towards the end of the summer break as people come back to the institutes. And Rob, if I can just also make a quick observation and thank the panel. I mean, that was a really interesting discussion. What we're seeing in OCRE is on the Géant framework in 2016, we saw a lot of the enterprise type workloads coming across, where workloads were simply being lifted and shifted from on-premise data centers and being transitioned into the cloud. Many of those enterprise workloads are starting to be consumed as multi-tenant software as a service. So there is a trend for the enterprise type workloads that we saw early on in cloud to be transitioning towards the supplier's own platforms and networks. And we are seeing a lot more research workloads coming across. Although we're not specifically tracking workload with the suppliers, you know, we obviously have the contract management group. They do have a good understanding of what procurements are taking place. and we are seeing a lot of research workloads coming across.
Indeed. Thank you very much, David. Indeed, very, very nice discussion today. I'm joined by my colleague, also Maria. Maria, do we have any other questions from the audience?
Yes, there was Ivar who asked a question earlier. I'm just copying it again in the chat because it's a little bit long, about the ANREN, if they can apply for a OCRE grant as a secretary for a consortium of institutes working together on specific research. So I've copied here again the question.
So to respond to that, the call will be very clear what the minimum requirements are, what the award criteria will be. We are going to encourage collaborations before institutes, a bit between institutes, so that we are going to distribute the adoption funding as widely as we can. We've seen in the first calls where there were collaborations, for example, between institutes in Serbia and institutes in Portugal, we're actually working with the institutes as a collaboration. And it is a really interesting way of distributing this funding. As from the NREN's perspective, specifically, I think you would just need to present the proposal as it pertains to your consortium of member universities, because the research could well be eligible for funding.
Yes, we have another follow-up question on that. Can a group of institutes have one budget?
So I'm not sure exactly what is meant by that. Again, we would fund a consortium, and we would procure probably on behalf of the institute that's leading in terms of the delivery of cloud services. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Okay, let us know, Ivar, if you need to further clarify your question by raising your hand, and then we can provide you the floor. But we don't have much time now. This will be the last question. I see we have one from Bogdan. If the named NREN does not have the human resources to manage all the processes of acquisition, user journey, life, etc., the final users are allowed to submit the funding application.
So the funding, as I said, is specifically reserved for research projects that are currently not consuming these kinds of services at scale. If the NREN is not resourced in a way that they're able to support the consumption of cloud services, then there are various different roles for the NREN in the OCRE project. There are underwriters like SURF, there are simple referrers that simply make the call of contracts available to the institutes. And then there are NRENs that we are starting to see, NRENs with really big community clouds that are starting to shift those clouds out of their own data centers and onto cloud platforms and just kind of further virtualize their own infrastructure.
Okay, Ivar has raised his hand. So now, Ivar, I'm providing you the floor. You should be able to unmute now to further clarify your question. I have a follow-up. Ivar, are you with us?
Yes. Yeah, I have a group of multiple institutes working together on research, and they were wondering if they can apply as a group for a grant, and how that then would work if they start up something on a public cloud. Would that be a single budget that they can all share for their research, or is that just one single institute managing that, or can the NREN maybe manage that resource for the whole group?
So there are different ways of doing this. As I said, the call will open and ask for the project proposal. There would be an opportunity for Jean as a CPB to procure on behalf of a number of the institutes. There's also an opportunity, depending on the NREN and the NREN's role, to actually procure as that CPB and distribute the funding themselves. There would be a number of questions that we would need to unpack.
Okay, thanks. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ivar. Maybe we can just have another question from Andreas. Does the funding also cover the cost for EO data sets?
So the funding covers the costs for procurements against suppliers who are on the cloud and EO catalogs. So a project could apply for EO services from one of the SMEs on the catalog, but they could also apply for cloud support for their actual workloads. So I'm not sure if that answers the questions, but there is definitely opportunity for you to claim beyond just the EO services, the Copernicus value add.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's all the time we have for today. But before we close, just a little bit of advertisement or shameless promotion. If you want to meet us in person, so we will be at the TNC conference on the 13th of June. So we have a workshop there, everything you need to know about the OCRE framework. That's in Trieste. Other than that, we also have a presentation as part of the session, building and buying session, as part of the TNC conference program on the 17th of June, how to survive a tender like OCRE. So if you want to meet us in person, you'll see us there. That will be our next engagement. So with that, I think that's the end of our webinar. Firstly, thanks to everyone, especially our panelists and our presenters who have given us a lot of things to think about today, lots of excellent presentations and information, and especially to all of you in the audience who have joined us today despite this holiday period. So thank you very much. It's very much appreciated. Any last words from the other speakers and panelists, perhaps from David?
No, just a big thank you for joining us today. And please track the remainder of the project. There are big opportunities, and we're very excited about what we do. We want to get as much visibility for what you do as possible. So please work with us.
Excellent. Okay then. Thanks everyone, and have a good rest of the day. Bye.